not showing up. I am recording this. Yeah, so it's this. Now you can see it, I hope.
Yes, sir, we can see.
So let's see at x equal to 0, what happens? At x equal to 0, and k equal to 0, this is non-existent. K equal to 1 term, it will be 0 minus sine of pi by 2, and with an absolute value of sine, right? So we can see that at x equal to 0, this will not be differentiable. This will be differentiable but not continuous. So k equal to 0 term drops out. Nothing in for k equal to 0 because sine of no. Sorry. Oh yeah, k equal to 0, x is 0 and k is, this will be 0 power 0, so it will be 0. So this will be summation k equal to 1 to infinity, and then 1 by factorial k, absolute value of x minus sine pi k by 2 k. Now, so here in this infinite series, even if one term is not differentiable, we'll get that the whole thing is not differentiable. So you can see that at x equal to 0, when you come from the positive side, it's x minus sine of pi k by 2 is the k equal to 1 term. So sine of pi by 2. So x minus sine pi by 2 and absolute value. And for x from the negative side, it will be kind of minus x. So the sign, the derivatives at x equal to 1 will not exist. So at x equal to 0, the derivatives do not exist.
Sir, I did not understand. Could you explain once again?
So firstly, continuity is not a problem at all, right? It's continuous everywhere. Now we are looking at differentiability. So fx is what I have written here. Okay, x minus sine pi k by 2. Let's write it carefully. So at k equal to 1, see that k is even number, this absolute value kind of vanishes and it is just that with a whole square. So it doesn't create any problem. It is the odd terms which are going to create a problem. And at k equal to 1, we will see that the derivative from the positive side and the as we approach 0 from x positive side and x negative side, with k equal to 1 itself, the differentiability differentiability doesn't hold. Right? So simply get minus x minus sine pi by 2. This is not differentiable at x equal to 0. But you can show that x minus sine pi k by 2 by k to the power k is not differentiable at x equal to 0 for k odd. And at k even, it means differentiable. For all these things, this is not differentiable. And so the total is not differentiable. Like one can write down the derivative. Let me open up a blank page and write down what is the derivative from the right and what is the derivative from the left at x equal to 0. So our function was fx is equal to summation k equal to 0 to infinity 1 by k factorial absolute value x minus sine of so if you look at x minus f0 divided by x at x positive, this will be equal to 1 by as we had noted, x equal to 0 term, k equal to 0 term doesn't appear. So 1 by k factorial x minus sine of pi k by 2 power k. And it's maybe more complicated than what I had bargained for, but
Sir, fx minus f of 0 has to be considered, right?
yeah, so f of 0 is oh yeah. This is working out to be a lot more complicated than what I had bargained. Yes. Sin pi k power mod of by 2 by power k, then summation. Yeah. So I guess we should separately look at for each k this quantity.
Sir, in fx, actually x is not equal to 0, right? So for that, it should start from k equal to 0 itself.
For
So for fx, I mean the first term,
yeah, I thought I will give a simple question, but it looks like it is a lot more complex. Okay. So then we need to do this for k bigger than equal to 0. And let's write gkx is equal to this quantity. X minus this power k minus and so is there a simple a power k minus b power k will be a minus b. Times this right? A power k minus b power k is we have written it out like this. And let's focus on what happens to the this quantity. So when sin pi k by 2 is 0, okay, so that means k is multiple of 2. Okay. Sin of pi as well as no, yeah, sin of pi, 2 pi, all these are zeros. So when k is even, then the for k even, this this is equal to mod x by x. And this quantity as x goes to 0 converges to a constant. The constant could be 0 or could be what happens if the constant is 0? So when k is even, this goes to mod x by k. But we have to separately
Sir,
take.
could you tell the last part once again? I mean, for k even, the second part, it should be mod x, I mean, summation mod x to the power j, right?
Mod x power j times mod x power k minus 1 minus j. So the product will come and we'll get mod sine pi by k power k minus 1. No? Okay, so let's do one thing. This looks like a lot more complicated. I will need to write down the argument. So roughly speaking, for k even, the blue part, this circle with yellow, that is going to mod x by x, and therefore from the two sides this thing will be different. On the other hand, this quantity unless I've made an error, may go to 0 when k is even. So was and case k equal to 0, we have to treat separately. So we will get, in any case, for k equal to 0, so we'll have to deal these cases separately and work out. And when k is not even but odd, then we'll have some other expression. So let me try to solve this and write it out and maybe send, or we'll discuss tomorrow. But it came out to be a lot more complicated than what I had bargained for when I changed k. I could have just changed k to some one constant, but I thought that constant should be changeable with k, and this one is far more complicated. So I'll try to do this separately and we'll work out. Okay.
Sir, I have another question.
Sure.
So it's a bit pedantic, but so can we do for f of x term by term differentiation? Because it's like we had proved that we can do it for power series which are explicitly written as a n x power n, but over here it's not explicitly written as a power series. So I'm not. Can we do?
Power series? See, okay. So I think what we can show is that if you have fx equal to summation fn x, and we have absolute convergence, etc., and we have to verify some steps, but effectively we have to work out a thing that you can do term by term differentiation. That's all.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
So some steps will be needed in proving, but that is the way to go. Yeah, but I will take care of that also when I try to write this. So the question is, when is, if fx is this, and if each fn is differentiable and has some behavior, when can we conclude that f is also differentiable? What conditions on this convergence are needed, right? That's the condition. Can we do term by term differentiation? Yeah. And offhand, the answer would be depend on, see, power series, what was our thing that we looked at first 10 terms and the remainder term and tried to argue that remainder term is uniformly small. So if we can do something like that, then we are done, but not otherwise.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Also, like in like question number 4, like part 1, like I think another condition is required that the function is bounded, because like otherwise, part 8 doesn't like.
Wait a minute.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this question, I tried to rewrite it, but there is again a problem when it is unbounded, then we have to allow C and D to be infinity. But in our definition of limits, that is not allowed. So, yeah. That example is not related to this then, but yeah. So the main thing was needed is when f is continuous, strictly increasing bounded functions, not strictly bounded. Continuous, bounded, strictly increasing function where a, b are in R, a is strictly less than b. Then show that this, and then f from a to cd is a 1, 1 on 2 function bijection. So this we can ignore for now. Still do it, but it doesn't fit in the other, it doesn't fit in the format of A and B or the question 1, but you can still give an example of a continuous strictly increasing bijection. There is no problem about that, but for that, these limits, we cannot interpret limit to be equal to minus infinity. That's the only thing.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, could you discuss the first part of the question? I mean, how do we go about proving the existence of the limit through the continuity condition given?
This the same question. This one. This
Yes, sir. Fourth.
okay. So why did this happen? So your question is, so we have given f is continuous, bounded, strictly increasing function. And your question was, how do we show that this limit exists, right?
Yes, sir.
Other one will follow similarly, but how does we argue that limit x going down to a fx exists? So this one will be very, going back to the our things about real numbers. Okay, if you look at this set, okay, now how to write is another matter, but how can we describe this limit in terms of this set? This is a bounded set. Okay, now that we have introduced boundedness, this is a bounded set, and this limit is, and it's an increasing function, so the limit should be the lower bound, least upper bound, sorry, greatest lower bound. So bounded, so greatest lower bound will exist, and you can then argue that that must be the limit. Now we can bring in the notion.
Okay, so for this we do not need the increasing factor, right? I mean, boundedness is enough.
No, you need, no. How will you argue that the least upper bound is actually the limit? You will need increasing.
Oh, okay, so the monotone. Okay. Similar to that.
It not work, right?
Yes, sir.
Both these least upper bound and greatest lower bound and both this lowest upper bound, both these will be useful in bringing C and D. Yeah. Hello. Yes. Yes, speak in English or Hindi, yeah. Yeah. You are going to come to install, yeah. Yeah, when are you coming? Okay, earliest in the afternoon, the better. Earlier, the better. Okay, all right. Thank you. Anytime after 2 o'clock. Earlier than between 2 and 3 will be ideal. Between 2 and 3. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Sorry, there's somebody who is supposed to come to do some installation, so I had to talk to that anyway. Okay, so so if you have something else, you can ask. Otherwise, let me ask something.
Sir, this question 5th subpart 3 for irrational is how do we prove this?
Okay. So firstly, first step is to show this for rationals. That I mean, we have done this in a particular case, I guess, when we introduced x power a when a is irrational. So this is to recall all that. So firstly, we show that fx power a is equal to fax. Then part 2 will tell you that this can be done when a is an integer, right? And then from there you go down and you somehow show that this is true when a is equal to p by q. That way you show it for rationals. After that, it is the continuity argument. For every irrational A, you have to go that there is a rational below and above, and then take the limit. And f is continuous. We have already shown in part 1, hopefully. So combining these three things, you should be able to conclude this for fx power a will be a limit of fx power alpha n as well as fx power beta n, and fx power alpha n as well as fx power beta n will both converge. So maybe both sides is a overkill. We can do it only on one side. That may also give the result. But that's the way for irrationals. Anything on this question? So, question 6, I will come to it. I have written out separately, which I want to go over some portions there. So we can go to that if there are no questions on other ones. But looks like only few of you may have tried questions. There seems like no questions on anything. If you are not trying the questions, then it's we are wasting our time, me as well as you. So I had hoped that there will be lots of questions asked today, but looks like there are very few questions asked. Few people have asked questions. So should I take it that others have done all the problems? So have you tried this question? X sine 1 over x. Is this continuous at 0? Is this differentiable at x equals 0?
Yeah, yes, sir, I have tried it.
What are the answers for the two parts?
It is continuous but not differentiable.
Continuous but not differentiable, right? Anyone else who has tried this?
Yes, sir. I have tried this too.
Yes, sir.
Yes, it is.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
I've
sir.
done it as well.
We did.
Okay, so let's see. One of you, tell me why is it not differentiable at 0?
So like f of x minus f of 0 divided by x is equal to sine of 1 by x, which does not have a limit as x approaches 0.
Correct. Okay. And 12 is deceptive. It appears that it is the square of the earlier one, but the answers change.
Yes, sir. Both actually occur. Differentiability as well as continuity.
Yeah. So, I mean, initially, I can tell you that somewhere long back, when I looked at 12, the question 12 here, that is, I thought it can't be differentiable. After all, x sin 1 by x is not differentiable. This is, but it works out to be differentiable. So, it's a bit of a surprise. It was to me at least. I don't know, but okay. So, yeah, some question? This 13 effectively we have, even the other parts we have done in class, but I want you to be able to write them carefully. By the way, when it comes to an exam, I had said it more than once in the lectures that if you are asked a question, you can report, you can write down or refer to something done in class or in notes or exercises, provided the same question is not asked. So, for example, this question is given, you can say, this we have done in class, this we have done in class, this we have done in class. That is not good enough, right? So, if something is asked, at least that you should be able to write down the proof there. You can't simply, if at all it is done in class, you go back to the class notes, copy from there, even that is okay. But you should be able to explain if later asked, how have you got this? You can't say that, sir, I just copied from notes, but notes is what you wrote. I don't understand what it is. That is not acceptable. Okay. So, let me now, if there are no other questions to answer, this was a question which I have now called it as a theorem. So let's say f is r positive 0 to infinity positive, 0 to infinity and 0 is excluded, is a continuously differentiable function. That is a bijection. And let g equal to f inverse be the inverse of f. That is, for each x, there exists a unique t such that equal to x, and then gx is. We are given that it's a bijection, so the inverse will exist, etc. So the main thing to show is that in this case, f dash x is not equal to, suppose that f dash x is not equal to 0 for all x, then we have to conclude that g is differentiable, and we have to write down g's derivative of g in terms of these functions f and f dash. That's the question. That was the question 6 there, where initially I had missed adding this f dash x not equal to 0 condition. So
sir, actually, I just remembered I had a question here.
yeah. Please ask.
Why do we need the continuously differentiable condition, sir?
Why do we need continuously differentiable?
Yes, sir. Maybe I made a mistake with my proof, but it seemed that I didn't use continuously differentiable.
Okay, so you used only differentiable.
Yes, sir.
Um, so if you can share your proof with me, I can look at that and explain. Maybe it is not needed in my proof either. Okay.
Okay. Okay,
So,
sir.
we'll go over a proof. We'll then explore whether this requires continuously differentiable or not. And if my proof requires and yours doesn't, that's fine. Then we'll drop it. But you send me later. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Sure. Thank you, sir.
I'm not saying that it is needed. Okay. In fact, this lots of things are not needed here. Okay. Some things may not be needed here. It's strict zero infinity, etc., etc. Not needed. So. First thing to show is that G is continuous. So that's what I have kept space here. Before we show that G is differentiable, it's a good idea to first prove that G is continuous, because we'll then use that in our proof. Okay, and so remember, G is a function on the open interval 0 to infinity. So, and continuity means continuity at every point. So let's fix the x 0 infinity and let t be gx. Given epsilon, we wish to get delta such that y is the same interval. Mod y minus x less than delta implies gy minus gx less than epsilon. That is our aim, to show that it is continuous. So, or equivalently, so for any s in R, because I'm applying inverse of this here, so I'm taking s to be g of y, and then y will be fs, x will be ft, etc. So equivalently, if we show this, the same thing works. So let's first see that if I show, I'm anyway going to prove one, so we need not go over this equivalent thing here. So let's fix epsilon. This helps in thinking how are we going to choose delta. Let u be t minus epsilon and v be t plus epsilon. Take delta to be this is our point G, this is the point X. I hope I have picked the right thing. F of T is X and G of X is T. So this is Fx. So we want to be able to get small. that if you go plus minus delta, then the difference between this is less than equal to epsilon. But we have this thing under control. And by choosing this difference small enough, we can still control. That's the idea. So let u be equal to t minus epsilon and v equal to t plus epsilon. So you want this, finally you want this to be less than within epsilon, so we go much and this much to level epsilon, fix these points. I'm now inverting it, and then look back and pick these 2 points. Of course, they may not be at the same distance from x, so we take smaller of the 2 differences and come closer. When we come closer here, it will come closer here, and this is where the derivative not being 0 and epsilon, if you choose small enough, then the derivative is throughout of that order will follow. So yeah. So let's come back now. So let u is t minus epsilon, v is t plus epsilon. We take delta to be the smaller of fu minus x and fv minus x. So if we now move x between, we will show that for this choice of delta, 1 holds. So let y be such that y minus x is less than delta. Recall, delta is this minimum of fu minus x and fv minus x, where delta is this minimum. I missed something here. In our problem, f was given to be increasing, right? I have not put that in the theorem here. It's another matter that from the given conditions, we should be able to deduce that it's monotone. You cannot have something r to 0 infinity, a bijection, which is not monotone. Can either be increasing or decreasing, but that's it. You can't have anything else because we want it to be bijection. But let's not get digressed in that line. Right now, let's take it to be monotone. So when f is increasing, so that fu is less than fv, it follows that y is between fu and fv. And how do I get that increasing means fu is less than fv? Remember, u is smaller than v because u is t minus epsilon and v is t plus epsilon. So if f is increasing, fu will be smaller than fv. And y will be between fu and fv because delta is the maximum difference and we are taking y minus x to be less than delta. So y will be between fu and fv, and as a result, writing s to be g of v, we will see that u minus v is between, s is between u and v. As a result, s minus t is less than epsilon. So now let's go back to the So this was our function. We have taken minus epsilon plus epsilon. Then we look at these corresponding parts and you go there. We whichever of these two is closer, take that as the anchor. So you bring in a thing which is strictly inside this band. Because our function is increasing, we will get that its image will be somewhere in between here. So whenever y is in the smaller interval here, f of g will be in the smaller interval here. So this is the idea which you have tried to write out. Okay. Any questions about this? And essentially the same when we are decreasing. I forgot to write that. Similar argument works when f is decreasing. You just have to interchange the uv thing there. Easier to look at it when we if my let me draw here. The rest argument is essentially the same. This is t, this is x. Now t minus epsilon to t plus epsilon go here. This time we will go up. Take the one which is, take something which is inside here, that will force you that g of that will be inside here. That's it.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, I had a doubt regarding the proof of chain rule that you sent. So should I mail you or should I say it?
Doubt about the chain rule that I sent. Yeah, if I have sent something and you have doubt, yeah, please send it to me. If I
Okay, sir.
before the class, I would have thought about it, but now let me not start reading it and trying
Okay,
to.
sir. Okay. I'll mail you, sir.
So here we can get monotonous from the fact that f dash x can't be 0, right?
Once again,
So here we can get monotonicity from the fact that f dash x can't be 0.
yeah. So I was going to say we'll return to that at the end after I have completed this. Yeah, we should.
Oh, okay, sir.
Yeah, f dash x. Okay, since you have mentioned it, yeah, let's come back here. That this monotonicity we can actually deduce because we have assumed f dash x is not 0. If it is not monotone, will mean what? That there will exist, let's say, 3 points A, B, C, such that FA is less than FB, FC is also less than FB, and A less than B less than C. So either this one or the opposite kind. A less than B less than C is there, but the inequalities will reverse. if it is not monotone, somewhere it has to go up and come down, or somewhere it has to go down and come up. One of these two possibilities, non-monotone. So best order option, best proof to give to get the f dash not equal to 0 will tell you monotonicity, because yeah, so
So I guess here, if we have continuously differentiable, we have a nice proof that like the derivative is always like of the same sense, because if there are 2 points which are not equal, then by MVT we have some point in between where the derivative is either positive or negative, and f dash x is never 0, so it can never change.
so maybe that's why I put it here. First say that monotone says that it is this continuously differentiability gives that f dash is monotone. Sorry, f is monotone.
So actually, I'm still not sure if we need continuously differentiable to prove it, but I guess the proof is simplified if we assume it.
Yeah, the other proof you send me, I'm not claiming at all that it is necessary. In fact, you don't even need bijection to tell you the truth. Okay.
Sir, but without bijection, we wouldn't have inverse, right?
No. There are other conditions weaker than bijection.
Oh, okay, sir. Okay.
So there is something called inverse function theorem, which you will do in a later semester. Okay.
Oh, okay, sir. Okay.
Okay. But I thought it may be good to do simpler versions here, and that's where I got all into trouble, because I didn't give the correct conditions. But okay. But well, you send me what you have written. We'll see if that works. But continuous differentiability implies this is f is monotone.
Got it, sir.
And now we have shown that indeed, firstly, that the inverse must be continuous. Okay. Now, essentially, the similar argument is going to tell you that it must actually be differentiable. And let's see. So, differentiability, once again, let's fix a x, and again t is gx. And for a sequence hn, which is in minus x to x, so x to 1. By 1 I have taken it. Okay. We wanted any sequence going to 0, hn going to 0, and then I'm looking at x plus hn. So suffices to bound it above by 1 and below by minus x, because x need not be bigger than 1. X could be getting somewhere. So x is small, I don't want x plus hn to go below 0. That is why I've carefully chosen hn to be between minus x and 1, such that hn goes to 0. Let us take kn to be g of x plus hn minus gx. So in this example, now I'm trying to compute the derivatives at this x. Okay. So I mean, shouldn't hn, I'm in Hn I am choosing so that all these points are well away from 0. That's it. And then we are going to argue. So Kn is distance between g of x plus Hn and gx. Now, continuity of G implies that this limit of Kn is also 0. Our Hns we are going to choose to go to 0. This Kns will also be converging to 0. Now, G of x plus Hn minus Gx by Hn. For differentiability, we have to show that this goes to some fixed number, which will be the derivative for any sequence Hn going to 0. So G of x plus Hn minus Gx by Hn this quantity. So G of x plus Hn minus Gx, by our definition, we have taken that to be Kn. And what will be f of t plus Kn? F of t will be, f of t by our definition is g of x. G of x, if you, f of t is g of x. So g of x plus Kn, when you do g of x plus Kn, what happens? You get g of x plus Hn. But that is exactly this. So Hn is simply f of t plus Kn minus ft. F of t plus Kn, let us start on f of t plus Kn is equal to f of t gx. So gx plus Kn, which is equal to gx plus Kn will be g of x plus Hn from focus on this yellow circled equation, then gx plus Kn is simply g of x plus Hn. So this is, but f and g are inverses, so this is equal to x plus Hn. F x plus Hn minus ft is x, so that will give you Hn. So we have now showed that denominators are equal. Kn, the numerators in these two expressions are equal because of the definition of Kn, and with that definition, we get the denominators also to be equal. So now just focus on the if it were the opposites, this is the denominator and numerator were interchanged, then we will get the derivative will be f dash. The limit will be f dash because that's f is given to be differentiable. We are also given that the derivative is non-zero, so the reciprocals will converge to 1 by f dash. And 1 by f dash t is equal to 1 by f dash of gx. And there we have used f dash t is not equal to 0. Therefore, whenever Hn is a sequence which is going to 0, then we get f g plus x Hn by minus gx by Hn. This converges to this quantity 1 by f dash of gx. So we get that f of limit as going to 0, gx plus h minus gx by h is this. We could write this without bringing in sequential convergence, but the writing became much neater and we can actually see through it. If you try to, at least the way I was trying to write it without bringing in sequentially, it was running on and on. So
Sir, So actually, this is where I had a doubt, sir.
Yeah.
So so when you want to use sequential convergence, the function has to be defined at that point, right? And equal to the limit.
That is the way we had used or we had proven for continuity only. Okay.
Yes, sir. So this is a separate theorem.
Yeah. So I will refer to that in a minute. Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah. So the here I should, because I'm dividing by 0, I should have added here Hn belonging to this. Hn not equal to 0 for all n. Okay. And this. And the proof, we don't have to refer to that theorem. We can prove, we can bring it directly. So for example, suppose this limit is either doesn't exist or limit is not equal to this quantity. What does it mean? So here is some function of h. Okay. If its limit is not equal to this quantity, it means that as h goes to 0, h not equal to 0 and h goes to 0. That means there will exist an epsilon such that no matter how close h is to 0, this derivative will differ from the right hand side by more than epsilon. So you can keep getting HNs which are becoming, so we can get hold of such that f separate theorem means you have just a separate proof. The statement is the old statement, but just once again we have to write the proof, not invoke that theorem. That's all. That is what it means that the limit does not exist. But then this shows that the earlier condition cannot hold, because now this sequence Hn, the way we have constructed it, is going to 0. And we have shown that this ratio converges to this quantity. So that is a contradiction. So does everybody see how I have argued that if you have, if the given condition of limit or sequential thing holds, then we can conclude that the function is differentiable. I think in the later pages, just so that you can use it elsewhere, I have stated it explicitly. But here, let us read that what I have written, and then we can come back. Okay. The following observations are useful in various proofs. We have done one in the class, and proofs of the others are similar. So we had done the following: f is continuous if and only if for a sequence Hn, xn, limit of xn is x is same as limit implies fxn equal to fx. So if this is exactly what we have done in class. And you don't necessarily need continuity over the entire interval. So if you have this is a subcorollary of that, which can be proven similarly. So f is a function, x is a point on its domain, in an interval a less than b, then saying that limit of fx plus h as h goes to 0 is fx. This is if and only for all sequences xn, one has xn, limit xn is x, then limit fxn is fx. So this theorem implies the previous theorem. The second theorem bottom is a fixed one for x. If this holds for every x, then the previous theorem. We had only proven this, but essentially the same proof, you do it pointwise. Okay. In other words, continuity at x if and only if. So this is f is continuous at x, and this is f is sequentially continuous at x. Continuity at x is same as x, f is sequentially continuous at x, and f continuous on the entire interval is same as f is sequentially continuous. Okay, but useful, because otherwise you will say if somewhere you need to use this for a fixed point, you will say, but sir, they have only done it for if it is continuous everywhere. That's why I have stated it here separately. And just now what I argued is the proof of this, that let f from E to R, x, the point in the interval, fixed, and the f is defined on the entire interval. Your set E is allowed to have other things, but the point x should be an interior point. There should be an interval around x which is contained in your E, so that the function is defined. Now, then limit h going to 0, fx plus h minus fx by h is alpha if and only if for any sequence with limit 0, again I should hn not equal to 0 for all n, one has fx plus hn minus fx divided by hn is alpha. And just now the proof I had written was if limit does not exist, then we can get hold of a sequence which will violate this. That's it. That's the proof. I will send this. Anything else right now? Time is up. Those who want to leave can leave, but I'm there for a few minutes. So this connection between sequential convergence and convergence in of the real valued functions. Various versions are there, and I have listed them here. Go over it and see that you understand those.
Sir, I guess another similar thing might be if we wanted to just use a sequential criterion for an arbitrary functional limit, we could do the same thing we've done for continuity, except instead of f of x at the end, we could just have some limit there.
Yeah, that's the point.
Yeah, right. Okay, sir.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. So what we have done in class was for one instance where you also the function was defined at that point and we are only doing continuity. But the proof there works in all these cases. Okay.
Right.
In fact,
Right.
we have had occasion to do h decreasing to 0, right? As a notation. So fx plus h minus fx. For example, if a the function was not defined at a, then the limit is only defined as limit from above. More generally, for even inside, you can think about limit from the positive side. So this one is h decreasing to 0. If and only for all decreasing sequences, you have the same thing. And some authors do write this limit h decreasing to 0 is sometimes written as h goes to 0 plus. That means it approaches 0 from the positive side. Likewise, limit h increasing to 0 is written as limit h goes to 0 minus. Okay. And for the decrease, and so the limit exists from the minus side if and only for all increasing sequences this happens.
Okay, got it, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Makes sense, sir.
Okay. The crux is that in the proof that we did here, we can choose this thing such that mod hns are strictly decreasing. Because mod hn plus 1, you can take it, instead of just being less than equal to 1 by n plus 1, you can take it to be less than equal to 1 by n, minimum of 1 by n and mod hn. Okay, minimum of 1 by n plus 1 and mod hn. So not only you can keep choosing the numbers which are closer to 0, you can choose so that absolute values, they are even closer than the previous time. That's
Right.
all.
Okay, okay.
And so that reduces writing proof so much if you can write in terms of increasing and decreasing sequences. Okay.
Okay, okay, okay.
So that is why I have separately stated those. Okay. And here one can say that this limit is alpha if and only for all sequences, increasing sequences this holds, and all decreasing sequences this holds. Increasing will tell you from the positive side, decreasing will tell you from the negative side, and if both of them is alpha, then the limit itself is alpha.
Oh, right. That makes sense. That seems, yeah, that seems quite useful.
So generally mathematicians who do analysis and various other things associated with analysis, they like the sequential version, but the geometers, etc., they say perfectly beautiful continuous thing. Why are you bringing in sequences? But it's a matter of what kind of maths one does and what kinds of things one faces often. The way I look at it, understand and look both of it, so that you can use whichever one you need to use in a given scenario.
Yeah, that makes sense, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right.